What's up, people? What's happening? All right. Oh, we gotta be quiet. Okay.
Hi, everyone. Welcome. Good evening. I think we've started. um, welcome. My name is Sari. I am the Public Programs Director of MOFAD, the Museum of Food and Drink. It is my absolute honor to welcome you this evening. For those of you who are not familiar with MOFAD, like I said, we're the Museum of Food and Drink. We are based in New York. We have been completely virtual for almost a year now, as you are all well aware. There is a pandemic. And last March, almost 1 year ago, we were just about to open an exhibition that we had been working on for 3 years called African/American Making the Nations Table, which was an entire exhibition celebrating the African-American contribution to American food culture. As you all know, what happened in March, in New York City, we were ravaged by the pandemic suddenly, and we had to make the really difficult decision to not open. So we have this incredible exhibition. It is sitting in the Africa Center in Harlem right now, and we are so excited to show it to you once it is absolutely safe to do so. But in the meantime, we've been doing so many programs virtually. It's been incredible. I know a lot of you here have been to programs before from all over the United States, in some cases even globally. And if there was ever a silver lining, it's been watching this community grow. And we are so, so grateful for your support. Tonight it is particularly meaningful to welcome you to Black Smoke, the history of African American barbecue, because of course it is February, it is Black History Month. And as an institution, we believe that the stories of African American culinary history need to be told now, pandemic or not. Black lives matter. They have always mattered. They will always matter. So it is my great, great privilege to help share these stories this evening. I hope you'll visit mofad.org to learn more about us as an institution. I recommend you sign up for our newsletter to find out about all the virtual programs that we have. Throughout the month, we have a continuing series which is part of Black History Month. So all of our programs are connected to themes of Black culinary history, the present, the future. We would love for you to join us for all of them. I do want to let you know that we have closed captioning available for tonight's program. So if you want to access that, you just have to click the little closed caption button, which is at the bottom right portion of your Zoom screen. And without further ado, I'm going to call on our amazing panelists this evening to introduce themselves. So why don't we start with Ed and Ryan Mitchell.
Hi, I'm Ed Mitchell, barbecue pitmaster from North Carolina, or specifically Wilson, North Carolina. Just glad to be here.
The legendary Ed Mitchell. And I'm Ryan Mitchell. I'm the son of legendary pitmaster Ed Mitchell. You know, our barbecue lineage traces back to over 150 years, from my great-grandfather to my grandfather to my father. So we're excited to share our family history with you guys.
All right, I don't think you can hear me, or I don't think you can see me, but that's okay. I'm gonna call on Howard. Howard, go ahead and unmute yourself. Say hello.
Hello, how you doing, everyone? Dr. Howard Conyers. I'm a pitmaster, rocket scientist. I studied the craft, and I grew up in the tradition of cooking whole hog barbecue since I was a child. So in Clarendon County, South Carolina. So in the PD region of the whole hog barbecue belt. So it's good to be here tonight, and I hope to be able to share some interesting facts about barbecue with you all.
Thank you. And without further ado, I am going to pass it over to our esteemed host of the evening, Adrian Miller, and he is going to take it from here. So good night, everyone. Enjoy the show. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. And thanks to MOFAD for just providing this opportunity for us to get together. I'm Adrian Miller, the soul food scholar. My tagline is dropping knowledge like hot biscuits, and I certainly hope to do that tonight. And we're going to be talking about barbecue. I'm the author of a James Beard Award-winning book on the history of soul food, another book on the history of African American presidential chefs, and then my forthcoming book is Black Smoke, African Americans and the United States of Barbecue. And when we talk about barbecue, it can lead to all kind of fighting words, right? Where's barbecue come from? Some speak of Africa, some speak of the Caribbean, some speak of North America. What region has the best barbecue? Should barbecue be sauced or unsauced? We're going to get into some of those questions, but I want to first point us in one direction. My fellow Americans, you probably have noticed, but something is terribly wrong with the current state of barbecue in our great nation. For the last 3 decades, you've been fed a steady diet of unrepresentative portrayals of barbecue culture. To quote Malcolm X, you've been hoodwinked, bamboozled, led astray, run amok. Since Valentine's Day is right around the corner, let me put this in romantic terms. The people who decide what stories get told about barbecue in terms of content, film, print, who gets a spotlight, shown on them, and then also, who's authentic, who's doing the best barbecue, have fallen deeply, madly, and longingly in love with white guys. And this has created a skewed perception of barbecue in our country, where African Americans are essentially being told, we're just not that into you. And this is really weird because if you look at barbecue history, going on 4 centuries of history now, for much of that history in our country, African Americans have been the standard bearers in barbecue excellence. In fact, for a lot of time in our country, you could not think of having great barbecue without having an African American involved in the process somehow. And so let's just show how this happens in media. If we can show the first picture, please, the black and white picture. I want to show this story, illustrate this story to you. All right, so if we zoom in on that as much as we can, this is basically the inside cover of Harper's Weekly in 1895. And this is talking about the Atlanta Exposition, which was a huge event at that time and covered extensively in media. And I don't know if it's possible to zoom in on this picture so people can see it, but essentially, they're showing this one scene where a Southern barbecue was being made for the people attending the exposition. Now, even though the article was principally about a white guy named John W. Calloway, he was a sheriff in Georgia who was famous for organizing barbecues, it centers on the African Americans who are actually doing the work. So we see African Americans as experts, as people at the top of their craft, doing whole hog barbecue in this picture. So that was 1895. Now let's fast forward to the early 2000s. If we could show the next picture, please. This is a cover from, this is a magazine kind of title page from Bon Appetit in July of 2003. And this article asks, who's who in American barbecue? And if you zoom in on the picnic scene, you can see there's not one brother or sister in sight. It's all these, it's basically a bunch of white people and one Asian American in kind of this backyard scene. So now the question is, how do we go from that scene in 1895 to this scene in 2003? What I argue in Black Smoke is that this starts to happen in the 1990s, where we see a marked shift in barbecue coverage and in barbecue media, talking about, who are the experts, who's doing the best stuff. And so it gets to the point where in the present day, very few African Americans come to mind when it comes to barbecue. And, actually, I would argue that for most people, the most recognizable African-American pitmaster was Freddie on the fictional show House of Cards, if you ever had Netflix. And so Black Smoke is part celebration, looking at African-American culture, and then it's also part restoration. It's moving African-Americans from the margins or the sidelines of barbecue discussion back to the center of the narrative, to show that African Americans have made significant contributions to this food that we all know and love, and that there's plenty of room in storytelling to include African Americans and anybody else who's making great barbecue. And to help me tell this story, I want to bring back our panelists, and I'll start up the first question with Mr. Ed Mitchell, the living legend. Now, it's common in a lot of African cultures for the person like me to ask the elder for permission to speak, but since I've already been talking, I'm just going to go into my question, so forgive me for that. But, Ed, you've dedicated your life to barbecue. So, given all that you've done, your experiences with barbecue, what does it mean to be somebody at the top of your craft in this moment?
First of all, thanks for having us. Personally, it means a great deal for me. It's pride. We had an opportunity to experience the craft at an early age, and we are very excited about sharing our knowledge now with people who understand how it began, how it actually began with me. I actually learned my craft from my grandfather and my father and my uncles, and it always centered around the fact that we as African Americans, we mastered the art of cooking barbecue. We actually hone in on all the techniques and made it what it is, because we didn't have any fancy equipment to use. So we had things like old cutout barrel or drums, or we dug a hole in the ground. That's where the word pit came from. And of course, and you have to be able to master that in order to perfect good barbecue. So to me, it put a spotlight on the things that we were doing as African Americans then didn't seem that important. But now it's at the forefront. Everyone wants to really learn how to do these things, and where did it come from, and where did I get it from, and who told you to do this and do that. So I've had a lot of challenges and being able to get that point across. So for me, it's very important, and it has a lot of pride to it, because even back then, the reference of Black people cooking barbecue was really referred to as pit boys. They still didn't rank the honor of being recognized as men, but yet we hone in on the craft. We master the craft. So I began to make it comfortable to say, well, I know you don't want to call me boy. You may have a stigma about that. I said, but you can call me a master, so I'm a pit master. So I put the two together in my world and began saying, I'm a pit master, because in homage to the fact that you refer to the Black guys as cooking barbecue as pit boys, and I certainly wasn't a boy at the time. And so I began to recognize who I am. So it makes me feel good to be able to bring that to the forefront so everyone can understand what it is when you say pit master.
Understood. Thank you. Howard, you are also doing barbecue. I know it's kind of a side hustle, a very involved side hustle, but tell us about what attracts you to barbecue culture, to being a practitioner of the craft, and also the history. I know you've done a lot of work in those realms. So tell us how you get connected to barbecue.
So thanks for this opportunity. But like Adrian, this barbecue thing for me started as a young kid. Like watching my father cook whole hog, it was just something. It was very special. It was a twinkle. Something about seeing the older men in my community, my father, some of my uncles, taking an animal from a foot and put it on a barbecue pit was just magical, just to see how they do it over a long process, over 12 to 24 hours from killing to our dinner plate. And that's what really got me into it as a young child. Not really necessarily showing me directly how to cook it. They never took me outside. You had to gravitate to it. Like it was the backstories, it was the conversations, it was the lessons that attracted me to the whole craft of whole hog barbecue cooking. As I got older and I moved away from South Carolina and moved to New Orleans, I realized the tradition was being left behind, was dying, because a lot of men was like, the people who was really carrying it forward was the people like Mr. Mitchell's age, like my father. And I saw that it wasn't going down to the next generation like that. And I realized I had a responsibility to them. But when I really saw the whitewashing of American barbecue, and I saw that they was talking about our enslaved ancestors cooked in a hole in the ground, all I can remember as a kid is my father talking about, I learned how to cook in a hole in the ground. And when I saw those images and I look at how I cook whole hog barbecue, it was a direct correlation to how I knew where the origins of barbecue was coming from. But the true stories were never being told because they wasn't documented. And so that's been my motivation and passion. And I went back to not only cook hogs, but I wanted to cook every animal in the American South that was talked about in the old literature, whether it was a goat, a lamb, a whole cow in a pit. So I could help kind of reclaim that knowledge that's been in the cemeteries for so many years.
Yeah, thank you for speaking to the diversity of the animals cooked, because everybody just thinks Southern barbecue pigs, but it was much more involved than that. So thank you. Ryan, a question for you. As I've traveled around the country, read and other things, this intergenerational connection to barbecue is not something that we see a lot of. I talked to a lot of older African-American barbecuers who are ready to pass this on, but their kids are not interested. So I think it's just really cool that you've connected to your father's work. So speak to us about what drew you to that.
Yeah, man. First of all, I can't take all the credit. I'm like the prodigal son of barbecue to a degree. I grew up in the restaurant business, and by the time I became of age, it was our family business. It was work. It was hardcore work. It was what my dad used to keep me honest. How I earned my sneaker money. So I grew up, very disconnected from the actual craft or appreciation for the actual craft, because we still were in a city, where those signs, said white only, not long ago. And so barbecue was, still in a culture of, not something, cooking was not something that was really, fashionable for Black culture during that time that I was growing up. But it was our business, and it was our job, and it's what we did. And I look forward to, the older I got, the more important it became to me to really, first of all, put forth the image of Black father and son doing business together. But I was determined to go off to college and play football and get my degree and take over corporate America. And things didn't quite work out that way. And so, God brought me back to the family business. And, at a time where my father was, we were making some waves. And, the first life-changing pivotal moment, I'll say, for me staying in the business or understanding, the genius of what it is we were doing was, we hit down in New York City in 2002 at the Big Apple Block Party. And at that moment in time, we had already served over 100,000 people. And, Danny Myers comes over and puts his arm around my dad and puts his arm on me and says, we served 100,000 people and created this amazing festival only because of you guys. And when I'm in New York City, that was the first time that I had an appreciation for the craft, because I wasn't surrounded by the racism that came along with, cooking. It was really an appreciation from the crowd. And the first thing that came to mind, I was like, yeah, we went through 100,000 people. That check need to be a little bit more than what it is, right? That's the first thing that came to my mind. And the second thing was, wow, my father's a genius, and we're on to something here. But it was the first time that the craft was respected, and I had a chance to put aside some of the emotional stuff and really, connect with the art form and realize that we had something special. So, we've been off to the races since then. And like I said, the most important thing is being able to, to put forth the imagery, that we are out to represent.
Yeah. So I'm going to raise this question for everybody because, I'm often asked, what is barbecue? And is there a true barbecue? And to me, trying to define barbecue is like trying to chase or capture a greased pig, right? Just kind of is really difficult. But 200 years ago, I think there was a uniform definition of barbecue. So Howard, you've been looking at this history. You talked about cooking on a hole in the ground. Can you explain for somebody who may not have any concept of what that means, what barbecue was like in, say, the 1800s?
Let's go a little further back than that, Adrian. Let's go to like 1670, the early 1700s. They were cooking in long trenches, and those long trenches had anywhere from, depending on how many people they need to serve, they could have 10 to 20 animals in there that the plantation elite donated to the event for a political rally. And so those barbecue trenches was that hole in the ground. And I think we should hear from Mr. Mitchell talk about cooking in a hole in the ground, specifically what that is. And so I'm gonna just say what the long trench was. It's about 2 feet to 5 feet deep, depending on what size animals they were cooking. They were about 3 or 4 feet wide, and the length of the pit really depends on how many animals they were cooking for their whole event. And it was almost like a shallow grave that was open to the atmosphere. And that was the universal term for barbecue across the American South, and it went across with slavery. When I was growing up, I knew barbecue as being whole hog. If we said barbecue, that's all it meant. I didn't realize it was the other animals too. And later on, we'll talk about some of the divisions in the Eastern North Carolina, the PD region of South Carolina. They really one and the same when you think about this whole Southern barbecue conversation.
Yeah.
But I think Mr. Mitchell is more appropriate to talk about the hole in the ground because he cooked a lot more than me in the hole in the ground. I only did it like three times, I believe. But I know
Okay.
Mr. Mitchell probably did it a long time.
All right, Mr. Mitchell, what would you add to that?
Well, he's right. I did my share of digging the pits and stoking the fires and getting everything going with the hole in the ground. And but the beauty about all that is that that's where the technique comes in. That's where the skill comes in. And quite frankly, I spent most of my time cooking the hog more so than the other animals, because that was what was in demand from my perspective. The fact that you can make the pit out of so many different structures, you can even make it out of cinder block. The whole concept is it has to be at least about 2 to 3 feet deep and about 4 feet wide, and you can make it as long as you like. And you put crossbars across the opening so that the animal can lie on that. And the beauty of that is that then what you do next is you have a pile of a barrel where you actually burn the wood so that you can take those hot cinders and spread them under the animal to cook it. So that's where the skill comes in. That's where everyone wants to know, well, how do you get the whole thing done at the same time whenever it's nowhere as thick. All the portions of the animals don't have the same dimensions. You know, the shoulders are thicker, the hams are thicker, but the midsection where the bacon comes from is obviously a lot thinner. But to be able to master those skills of being able to place your fire or your cinders in the right position in order to make that happen is where your real skill comes in. So
the hole in the ground pit technique also is important to mention. That is also a skill set that was mastered by our ancestors. Cooking an animal in the ground also helped hide the smoke, when they were cooking and trying to feed while we were, making our migration up north, so to say. So cooking in the ground was a skill set of survival as well as a technique.
Now, I have to say, growing up in Denver, Colorado, I really did not get much whole hog barbecue. So my very first taste of it was years ago at the Southern Foodways Alliance when Mr. Mitchell made a whole hog, and that was a revelation. So thank you for doing that.
It's important, too, to add the agriculture gets separated, too, when we talk about barbecue. It's important, the South is traditional. You have to understand the South and the hog, was the domestic animal of the South. And as you get up towards Texas and the Midwest, it turns into, the cow and beef. So everybody has a different definition based on the animal that was, marketed in that region.
So I'm glad you mentioned that. So a conventional wisdom is emerging that true barbecue is cooked low and slow and should be served unsauced. So what do you all think about that?
I'm the oddball out. I think people cook it low and slow because they're a little timid, and they do that so they won't be. They can perfect their cook. They won't burn the animal. But I'm a guy. I like it cook it hot and fast because that's the way I was taught. I get my temperatures up real high, maybe 350 to 400 degrees, and so the heat will get in there and break up the muscles and cook the animal through and through. Now, so I have a different perspective about low and slower. Of course, I don't knock anyone's way they do it, as long as the outcome is successful. But I'm a hot and fast kind of guy, you know. I'm not a low and slow man.
All right, I don't think you're alone. Howard, how would you describe how you cook in terms of the temperature and length of time?
I won't say I'm a hot and fast. I bring my animal in the pit up the temperature together. I bring it up. I don't want to start it too hot. I like to kind of slowly bring it up the temperature, and I want to see certain things. I want to smell certain things happening when I'm cooking. And that's what I realized when people were cooking in a hole in the ground. You had to smell. You had to use your five senses to cook barbecue. You couldn't just trust what you could see in that pit, because you couldn't see underneath that animal. So I'm an eyeball there, but the sauce versus no sauce thing, like what people fail to realize about the whole no sauce thing in like Texas barbecue or these other regions is in the vinegar pepper based barbecue sauce, that where all the seasonings were being applied to the animal throughout the cooking process. So that's one of the things. Also, the connection that Ryan made about the farm is critical to the whole barbecue discussion. You don't have whole animals unless you're farming. When people start moving away from the farm into the cities, then with the commercialization, you got to have a lot of animals for a lot of people, so you start getting the cuts of meat, and so you start losing the way that whole animal cooking. But that farm piece is very important to understanding the whole hog or whole barbecue tradition in the American South. You got to have that farmland.
Yep. Yeah. Thank you. Hey, Ryan, I heard through the grapevine that you like putting raisins in your potato salad. Is that true?
Not at all. That's a false. It's a lie.
All right, we'll go on to the next question. So, talk to me about the challenges of being a barbecue restaurateur in these times. Can you speak to maybe historically the challenges that Black barbecuers may have that others don't, and then how has COVID really thrown a monkey wrench into what you're doing?
Yeah, I mean, listen, there is, the pandemic is something to be taken extremely serious, but for most Black entrepreneurs in the food world, barbecue in general, there's always a version of COVID. You know, there's always a mountain to climb. There is always, a challenge, to be a successful, profitable, restaurant. And so, COVID has really exacerbated a lot of those challenges that we have always had. At the top of the list is always resources, right? But specifically, when you're a Black restaurateur, you got to hit a home run early. You don't have 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years to make mistakes and comebacks and get backs. You're expected to be successful out the gate. And the disconnect or the challenge for barbecue specifically really is based on, the labor is so intense that you don't actually have a litany of other well-trained, staff just laying around. So if you franchise a pizza place or a burger place or a chicken joint, well, you have, hundreds of other restaurants to pull talent from, right? So if you're going to be a pitmaster or a barbecue guy, you got to know that, there's not a lot of talent to pull from. And for most African Americans, we're wearing 4 or 5 hats anyway, with the cashier, the server, the planner, the cook, the chef, the pit master. So it gets a little difficult, in times like these where labor is a little bit, a challenge.
Okay.
So, the other piece to, minority-owned restaurants right now via COVID is just technology is changing how we, get food into the hands of customers, and so we gotta catch up, with some of those things and be a part of delivery services and things that we weren't doing in the past.
Yeah, and it's great to see that you're on Goldbelly sending your sauces around the country. So
yeah, we started doing that, man. 2000, like the first COVID, well, I don't want to say the first COVID, but the first, 2015, we started to understand. I thought that, these meal kit delivery services were going to be the first thing to dry up, Black-owned restaurants, because people were shipping food all over the place and, different things of nature. Standalone restaurants were were drying up a long time ago to a degree. But you just try to stay ahead of the curve as much as you can.
Yeah. All right, Howard, I know you had a couple of questions, so why don't you go ahead?
Okay, I'm gonna just say something real quick about the gender and female pitmasters. I'm seeing that it come up a lot. There are few female pitmasters. There was one in my community named Muzzy Pearson, and I'm pretty sure it was all over, but it wasn't large spread because unfortunately there's a gender role in the South, in the old South. A lot of times the men did the cooking on the outside and the women did the cooking on the inside. I mean, that's just the reality of it. That's the reason you don't hear a lot of them, but the ones who could cook barbecue, they were great barbecue cooks. And the other part of this equation, where some of these women was involved with cooking barbecue, and this is the question I'm gonna ask Mr. Mitchell. Some of these women had bootleg liquor houses, but they maybe wasn't in the woods making the liquor. It was some other people making it. Some men was in the woods making the liquor. But there's a strong correlation between whole hog barbecue and bootleg liquor. And I'm just curious, did you find that in Eastern North Carolina, where you from, Mr. Mitchell? Because every time I went to cook a whole hog, that showed up.
Oh yes.
I wasn't drinking, I was too young.
Oh yes, and you left out another element. You had juke joints, and because we socialized, we fed, and we made corn liquor, and so those three went hand in hand. And for me, in the days, North Carolina is obviously the economic engine for North Carolina was tobacco, flue pure tobacco, and they used to cure tobacco with wood, hardwood, oak wood, and so we would be curing tobacco and find up the boilers for the moonshine as well. So, you had a guy that just because he was cooking barbecue, he was doing something else too. But the beauty of it, he was getting everything right and prepared for what we're going to do the weekend when we go to the juke joint, So it's, but that was a way of life. I mean, that's the way it was. And it was good times. Those were very good times. And so cooking whole hog and making about 3 different names they got for it. They got hooch, and they got stump hole, different names that they refer to the white liquor, the moonshine liquor. So we specialize in those things. And so when you became a true master, you were able to do all of that. You were able to make good moonshine and cook good barbecue, and you could dance pretty good on the dance floor when you go to the juke joint. So we were all around.
All right, we call that Renaissance people.
And so I'm gonna add something on that. Like when you talk about barbecue and you see craft culture, like we was already doing it. We was already doing craft beer or craft spirits with those guys in the woods, and we were doing the barbecue. So there's nothing new. It's just a reinvention of something that we already created. And
That's
so
right.
We used to call it corn. We used to also call it corn, Mr. Mitchell, which was really fascinating. Again, like I tell you, I couldn't drink it because I was too young, but the jug always showed up when we got ready to cook a whole hog. For the people who used to come by and drink, I never drunk because I seen a lot of animals got messed up during the cooking process because some people drank a little bit too much.
Oh yeah.
The other part of the equation, the other part of the equation about this is in these rural farm communities, this bootleg liquor and this barbecue really created economies. It created a way to keep the money into the community and circulate the dollar. And a lot of people don't realize that how like they went hand in hand because you needed something to help get you through. Because I mean, as I hear my parents talk about like the cotton and tobacco, the money they made, sometimes people didn't make enough. And so they had to do something to supplement the income.
That's right. Well, we used to have moonshine parties, to pay the rent, to help subsidize the rent, maybe help buy little groceries and so forth. So it was all a cultural socialization of things, and that's what made it so special. You say you didn't you were too young to drink. Well, that was a good thing about my family, my dad and my granddad. They were very strict on, you know, whether or not you could indulge. But as I said, I had one incident whereas, like you said, everybody when the moonshine showed up at the beginning of the cooking the hog, everybody got a little too much, and nobody was watching the fires. So I was able to get in there and kind of watch the fires and everything, save the day. And so by 4 o'clock when everybody started coming around, you know, everybody jumping up, oh my goodness, we done burnt and messed up the hog. And so my grandfather walked over and saw this beautiful hog that was done. He says, oh, who did this? And I didn't know whether I was going to get reprimanded or not. So I said, me. So he called me over there and put his arms around me and put the jug to me. And so, and that was a rite of passage for me. So, but it was just an awesome time. Good times.
Great. Well, we only have a few more minutes before we go to audience questions, and I'm glad to see people are putting their questions in the chat line. So, Howard, let me go back to you. Can you just tell us about a couple of people who we should be watching in the world of barbecue right now? People maybe inspiring you?
I like watching Rashad Jones in Florida, in Ocala, Florida. I also like watching Brian Furman. Those are two individuals I like looking at.
Great.
And a guy named Ricky Scott, but a lot of people don't get to see Ricky Scott.
Okay, and where's Ricky Scott?
In Williamsburg, South Carolina, a little small joint.
Okay, we'll try to find him. All right, how about you, Ed and Ryan? Who are you looking at these days?
Well, I'm not on the circuit like I used to be. So
I got two guys down in a gentleman down in South Carolina who's up and coming. He has a food truck up and coming, but he was on the latest. He's the latest roster addition to Food Network's barbecue crew. It's a husband and wife team. Markeith and Danielle Green. Mother Smoking Good is their food truck. They're out of South Carolina. They got an amazing group. And then, you know, if you ever get over to Durham, you know, Corner Boards Barbecue, they have another great food truck as well. And those guys are going to be moving into a freestanding building. But they also two guys on the up and come to Food Network's, you know, inclusion of diversity of up and coming barbecue guys. So.
Great. Okay.
In North Carolina.
Yeah.
Most of my guys have died out.
Okay. Fair enough. Howard, can you tell us a little bit about this incredible initiative that you got going on with Kingsford?
Yeah, I'm doing this program with Kingsford. I'm a mentor for Preserve the Pit program. And as Ryan said earlier, the people who create American barbecue, they're being left out of the equation. So Kingsford partnered with Kingsford, and we got this initiative where we're giving aspiring Black pitmasters or people who are interested, Black people in the barbecue industry who want to go and pursue their dreams, go further. We're giving them one-on-one mentoring, we're giving them training, as well as we give them, there's a grant that's being awarded to them as well. So it's a rare opportunity. It's something that Kingsford, I believe, is committed to based on the conversation we've been having for a long time with this project. And I'm just excited to be a part of it, but it really is a way to help pay this barbecue tradition forward and make sure it continue to go on, and really honor and recognize the Black professionals who contributed to the craft, because the individuals who did back during our ancestors' era, they were the professionals who held this tradition together.
All right, thank you. So to the Mitchells, what's next for you?
Well, right now, man, we are, you know, fortunately, our sauces and our products are in stores. We are, you know, the only living, breathing pitmaster who has his face on the bottle, and he is actually nationally distributed around the country. This gentleman over here, that was just money is no option, you know, no object. It was just a representation, and so proud to be able to see my dad being able to be, you know, thought of in that way, man. So we're pushing our products, our health initiative. My father, he's also a borderline diabetic. So we've been really pushing on, you know, diabetes awareness and the reduction of sugar in the African American diet. You know, it shouldn't take a pandemic for us to to realize that if we don't take care of ourselves, nobody else is going to. So we've started our health initiative through our products, and we're going to use the rest of our time in this business to really stand on that platform. And then our restaurant is, we'll get back to construction here in the next couple of months. And, hopefully we'll be having a post-pandemic grand opening here in about 6 to 8 months. So, we're going to keep the train moving and keep the culture alive.
All right. How about you, Howard? What's next for you?
What's next for me? Just really focusing on this Preserve the Pit program. That's important to me. I got a coffee table book coming out, but that's less important to me. It's more important for me to start really diving deep and making sure recording some of these oral histories regarding this barbecue subject. And really, it's an honor and pleasure to be on stage with Mr. Mitchell. I could have just really sat here all night and listened to him talk, because he is the person that motivated me. He was the one who was out here, who helped loosen the ground, as some of the old folks used to say, so that when I was able to come through and talk about like Black people in barbecue, the ground was already broken open. So it made it a little easier for me to push the conversation further. So I owe a lot to you, Mr. Mitchell, if I never told you that, but I think I have told you that before. But you really opened the door to have this conversation and allowed me to be able to do some of the things I do, even though I didn't know who you were personally, besides reading about you a couple of times. So appreciate being here with you.
Well, I appreciate that, Howard. Everything I've done in this barbecue has just been a labor of love. It's because it was a pride thing for me once I found out what the undercurrent was, and meaning that, okay, when people were coming around asking these questions, I knew they were asking for some reason. And once I figured out that, okay, well, you got this big machine over here, you got this restaurant, but you really don't know what it's really all about. I never forget whenever I was invited down to this Foodways Alliance, I think Andre, I mentioned earlier, when they had me down as the first pitmaster down there to show everybody how to cook whole hogs. And so it was kind of funny, because once I got out of there, what was so natural for me, was hard for a lot of other people. But I kept reminding everyone, this is something that I did because it was just a way of life. And I always tell people, first of all, you talk about the gender. I always tell people that the real true pitmaster was my mom, because she cooked barbecue, and she did all the cooking on the inside. And so when she told me one day I cooked the hog for her, and it went so fast, she said, I'll be surprised if I go back to the original way of cooking barbecue and add all these sides to it. So like the collard greens and all of that. So again, when I really found out that when we came to preparing the animal, slaughtering the animal to be cooked, well, the landowner or the farmer, the white farmer, he gave away all the things he thought that was bad, like the entrails, the feet, the head, and things of that nature. And I always would wonder, why I like certain things where I do. Why do we like chitlins? Okay, why do we like collars? But I always kind of imagine that whenever the master farm gave those entrails and those disregarded parts away and just kept the ham, the shoulders, and things that he felt that were the best parts. But the old farmer didn't realize that when the pit master took those things to the house, that his wife looked around and probably, and I would imagine, maybe had 10 or 12 heads that she had to feed. So she started cutting off those feet and pickle those feet, and start to take those ham hocks and cropped off some collards out there and threw those ham hocks in those with those collards and those chitlins, which she seasoned them up real good. And so next thing we know, we had a feast. And so to me, I think that was an art of survivor, because had she not known what to do with those things, I don't think that we would be existing today. So my hat's off to that strong matriarch in the family.
Yeah, and thank you for answering that question about and talking about your mom, because we've been getting a lot of questions in the chat about the role of women in barbecue. And as Howard mentioned earlier, Black women have had a strong presence in our culture. And in fact, in my forthcoming book, Black Smoke, I found an African American woman who was enslaved, who was what we would call a pitmaster today, doing barbecues in Arkansas in the 1840s. And in fact, she made enough money to buy her freedom. So check out my book for that story. It was an incredible find. Okay, let's spend a little while with these questions. So Howard, we have a quick question about the Kingsford initiative. We put the website in the chat, but what's the best way for people to connect with that? Is that to just go through the website?
Go through the website and apply through the website. All the information is there.
Okay, cool. All right. So one question we had is about sauces. So I know that you've been looking at the history of this, Howard. So can you give some insight on why regional sauces even develop from that one vinegar sauce you talked about?
Yeah, so the vinegar pepper-based sauce is the oldest sauce in the market. But as commercialization came onto the scene, like that's when you start having the mustards and the ketchup comes to the equation. And then different people, different profiles. It's almost like we talk about barbecue sauces and they change as people leave their home. So you get more ketchup into different places, different hot sauces. But the thing that as things come onto the market, people add those things into their barbecue sauce pot. And it's kind of like with barbecue in Eastern North Carolina and the PD region of South Carolina. I at one time thought it was different, but they're not really different. They're one and the same. It's just been an evolution. And I thought it was really, what clued it to me that it was the same when I looked at the landscape, the tobacco farms, and seeing those tobacco houses in the PD area of South Carolina that made it one and the same. But then the old stories, you're talking to elders telling you how they had pulled pork in Eastern North Carolina. And then Mr. Mitchell explained on our prep call, and he may want to share that, the evolution, all Eastern North Carolina barbecue wasn't always chopped.
Right, it was pulled, and that's where the term pig picking come from. Once we cooked the animal and we what we call mopped him, put the good soft vinegar sauce and stuff on him, and we put it out there, and everyone that's for a large group of people, everybody came by and just sort of pulled the pieces that they wanted. But the chop came about whenever, especially my mama, they wanted to go ahead and parch the skin, cook the skin, and incorporate the skin into the barbecue. Well, in order to do that, we had to parch the skin, and then we had to take certain portions of the animal, like the bacon section, and chop it up, and then we add the skin to it and chop it up inside, and that's how the chop came about. But it started out as being what they call a pulled pork.
Great. So we had a question here, and I think Mr. Mitchell, you can speak to this. So one person asked, in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, did white people go to black-run barbecue joints for barbecue?
Yes, I think they did. I mean, we certainly had most of my clientele eventually end up being white once they found out that I was cooking it the way we were cooking it, because my mother said, we put a lot of love into our craft and add different spices and add the size and everything. And so, yes.
I can't speak for I don't, in our city, we didn't have black-owned barbecue places in the 50s or the 60s. Can't speak for the rest of the country, but we didn't have black-owned establishments, food establishments at that time. As we got into commercial restaurant business in the late 80s, yes, that was one of the most interesting things. But, our business ended up being predominantly white, to be quite honest with you. So, certainly 80s, 90s, and going forward, the demographics inside the restaurants really, really changed.
There's one in y'all neighborhood that's closed now. It's a tragedy, but Jack Cobb and Son in, I think that's Farmville. When I was talking to him before they closed, he said that the white people were scared to come across this side of the town. So for a little while, when his father ran the restaurant, he had to take the barbecue to their side of town. And then he told them, if y'all come over to my side of town, the black people not gonna mess with y'all. Just tell them y'all going to the barbecue restaurant. And so you always, there were some cases of that, and that was one that's in kind of y'all backyard. I hope he's still alive, but Mr. Jack and Rudy Cobb was a very fascinating individual when I went to talk to him.
Yes, sir.
So Howard, let me stay with you. We got a question here. Outside of the initiative, what are other ways that people can support African-American barbecuers and keep this legacy alive? What can, people who love barbecue, what can they do?
I would say when you read a publication and you see a publication that has not but a whole bunch of white pitmasters, you need to write the editors and challenge, say, where are the black people in this article? Because they're here. They're always been there. They just don't always get the main media coverage, whether it's Bon Appetit, New York Times, Southern Living. You need to ask that. If you see a barbecue competition, you need to go and support that. And if you're in the financial place to be able to support or sponsor a team, you could do things such as that so they could be in those kind of spaces where they could be. Because going to like a competition barbecue event or being in one is very expensive. It's not, and with the wealth disparities in this country, it's not an easy thing to access.
Mm-hmm. So the Mitchells, what can people do to support African-American barbecuers?
I would piggyback right. I don't want to piggyback, but I would piggyback right off of what Howard said, man. You just, I think it's really important for people to, get interested in doing the history of the cuisine. We don't have a cuisine in this country that we stand behind. And I think it's really important that we do that for barbecue. We were blessed enough to be at the very forefront of what happened and the reason it took off. In 1998, Food Network becomes established, right? In 2002, the timeline from 98 to 2002, when Antonio Bourdain walked into our restaurant and he filmed Cook's Tour Season 2, there was, it happened. Food Network took barbecue and they specifically were turning it into a pop cultural phenomenon, right? So that's a very, important path that people need to do in their history when they find out why barbecue took off to mainstream and who was allowed to take it off to mainstream, okay? We just have to keep being interested in it. You know what I mean? We got to transition the interest from other things to, barbecue culture so we can put our hands around it, and let people know, that we know the history of it. So keep calling out these publications, keep calling out these, these streaming services and these media services for not acknowledging. They make lists for the best ribs in the country, and they only have one black dude on it sometimes, not one. Right? That's blasphemy.
Yes, blasphemy. Okay, last question, and I'm going to ask you all to keep your answers to a minute because we have a special surprise for everybody watching. So, interesting question. Are there some side dishes that you grew up with that you don't see that much more in barbecue these days? Is there a side dish that comes to mind? Yeah, go ahead, Howard. Do you have a...
my favorite barbecue dish is barbecue hash because it's made from the head, the liver, and the likes. You don't see that dish anymore.
Okay, is there rice in that as well, or is it just the meat?
You serve it over rice.
You serve it over rice. Okay, gotcha. Is it spicy? Oh, I guess
no,
not. Okay, all right, Mr. Mitchell. What about you? Is there a side dish that you're missing these days?
Well, it's a side dish, but I'm a great fan of the veggies, and my mother used to make rutabagas to go along with barbecue, and man, that's off the chain. Yeah, and she used to say, you start making these old side dishes like rutabagas and chopped cabbage. In other words, rather than making coleslaw, take the cabbages and just make a chopped cabbage and add a little, onions to them. And she also said squash and stuff like that to really make the dish a real special treat.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Ryan, Ed, Howard. Great conversation. And thank you for showing love to African American barbecue. And now we have a special treat for everybody. We have Deborah Jones of Jones Barbecue in Kansas City, Kansas, who's going to introduce the short film. So I'm going to turn it over to her in a moment. And please note that after the film, the program is over. So you won't hear from us again. So thank you for being with us and good night. Let me turn it over to Deborah.
Hello, how's everyone?
Hi, Deb.
Hi, how you doing?
We're kicking.
Well, as my dad used to say, hi, hi.
Well, mine, you say I can kick, but not I can't. I kick and not high. I can flutter, but I can't fly.
Okay, okay, yeah. Well, it was a nice story y'all told. That was very interesting. I hadn't heard that before, so I'm very enlightened about that. Mm-hmm.
Excellent.
But my dad taught up me and my sister and brother and them how to barbecue and make our own sausages and our own sauce. And it took years to get in the mainstream of having any recognition to it. It's just been the last maybe 3 to 5 years we got any recognition. And we've been around 40 years. And I took my dad's legacy and, put it out there finally with some help of with Steve Harvey, the Queer Eye Show, things like that. Our sauce now is sold in all the stores, and our business is doing well. Even in spite of the pandemic, it's done well. Plus, we have a vending machine that we serve our barbecue out of after we close.
Okay.
And
that's smart.
That's smart. That's next level.
Here in the Midwest, we had a lot of free, low temperatures, -2 and all that. But my vending machine is still making money. We serve beef, ham, turkey. We serve carrot cake, German chocolate cake, and another cake I can't remember. And then we serve on the bottom shelf. We serve our rub, our sauce, and our beans on the bottom shelf. And it's done quite well.
That's good stuff. That's how you evolve right there.
Yeah, and
that's next level right there.
It's 24 hours. It's 24 hours a day. So all you gotta do is swipe any type of card. It's no cash. You just have to swipe a card. And we got a pop machine next to it if you want something to drink. And you can get that 24 hours a day. And if we're not open, it's over here for you.
Love it.
Yeah. And and it was surprised. It came in handy when the pandemic came.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, definitely.
No, that's nice. There.
Yeah, we're still on curfew around here, so we everywhere is closing at 9 and 10, and pretty much carry out only still. So
we close it. We open from 10:45 to 3, and that was way before the pandemic.
Okay.
I only do 10:45 in the morning to 3 in the afternoon, but I get down there like 2 in the morning.
Yeah.
Because we cook up everything fresh, and once we sell out, it's over.
Right.
That's the way to go.
That's the way it should be.
That's the only way to go.
So that's basically it. And I've never called myself a pitmaster. I was just barbecuing like what my daddy taught us. So, but a lot of people say, hey, these are pitmasters, this, that, and other. But I always just known just to go out and barbecue and do what I got to do.
Yep.
Thank you, Deborah. What a wonderful surprise. Thanks, Howard, Ed, Ryan, and Adrian. I know you had to pop off. So we're going to show the film now so you can actually see Deborah and Mary in action in Kansas City. I just put the link in the chat. So if you're using a VR headset, you're going to want to watch the film on your smartphone in your headset. Otherwise, just stay with us and you can just watch it right here. So again, I just want to thank everyone. This was really wonderful. Enjoy the film and come back. We have 2 more programs next week. So good night, everyone.
Night.
Thank you.
Sure.
Good night.
Night.
African Americans in the South, many of whom were enslaved, played a critical role in the making of barbecue. After emancipation, African American barbecue cooks brought this cuisine to various parts of the nation, including Kansas City. Today, Deborah and Mary Jones carry on this tradition.
We don't use any chemicals or any fire lighter and none of that. We just basically use cardboard, newspaper, and a little oil. See, what people don't understand, when they start calling me a pitmaster, basically, I was kind of surprised. And the reason I was surprised is because when my dad was teaching us the basic of the barbecue thing, it was about learning responsibility. It was about learning how to have something else on the side and just how to make money other ways. It was just something that we was trying to learn to make a living.
Hey,
Hey, Jason, what's up?
how you doing this morning?
I'm all right. You got our order ready?
Yes, ma'am. Here we are.
What you think about them Chiefs?
Hey, going all the way this year.
Well, you know, we got to do a little bit more tightening up on some things, but I think we can do the damn
I think
thing.
we're gonna do all right.
Yeah, I think we'll do all right. Yeah, I agree with you.
How's your day going?
Hey, man, when I wake up, I'm always all right here. Shoot, you know how that go. Yes. I need a side of fry. That okay? Okay, now you got burn in what? Burn in what?
I got a burn in and a burn ends and ham, then a bun of beef.
Here's the burn in.
Be with somebody for 40 years, you think you're gonna get along every day? No. Yeah, we have disagreements. We argue, but that's what sisters do. You know, what if it was a perfect day every day? You think that would be any fun? No. She always want to tell me what to do. She say I always want to tell her what to do. And that's just sisters, I guess. We good though. We good. Okay. I am the customer service rep. I have to make sure that our customers taken care of and that they leave happy.
All right, 12.75, and I'm just waiting on your fries.
Thank you. Thanks, guys. We're waiting on your hot fries, okay? We started off with our dad as little girls making sausages up on milk crates. He taught us how to watch the meat without a thermometer.
I built a relationship with planners probably about 39 years. They have everything, and if they don't, they'll get it for you. My dad and my brother went to Planners for the seasoning that we use now for our sauce.
$3.75. This is for your name, okay?
The space that we work in, it's tight in here. It's tight, and that's okay. When it's all four of us in here, you know, we ain't no little girls up in here, okay? So we do a lot of booty touching, booty bumping, you know. But we all do well. We got a good chemistry. It works well for us. We just welcome and love and appreciate everyone. No one is any better than anyone else. Everybody that comes here becomes family. I am proud to be a Black business owner and a woman at that. If you think about it, who was really cooking the food back then? We, far as I know, you would always find the Black people in the kitchen. The Blacks were. We were the cooks, we were the servants, we were all that.
You know, our whole motto is we cook our stuff up fresh. We don't give you yesterday's meat. You have to turn your meat. That's how you get it tender, is turning it. The fire will cook it real even as we turn it. And so it's good smoke flavoring, nice and juicy. No, we're gonna go to the kids.
How's the kids?
Good.
Good, okay.
Good.
See, I go out there and talk to the customer.
Okay.
Well, hell, throw it on up there.
and I touch them and we hug and we take pictures and we do all that. That's the good thing for me. And then for them to say afterwards, this was so amazing. I can't wait to come back next time. That all makes it worthwhile. Just to know that they walked away happy. I'm good. I'm good. How good, G? Hi, baby. How you doing? Hi, good. How you doing? What you bro? Yeah, baby, I can make you happy too while you standing there. Okay? That's baby, okay? Y'all leave baby alone. That's okay, baby. That's okay. That's okay, baby. That's right. There you go.